Hello and welcome back to SportsKhabri. In today's podcast, we will be speaking with Vishal Uppal, former India Davis Cup player and Asian Games bronze medalist 2002. Vishal has spent a lot of time with the sport in our country. There are a lot of challenges that the sport faces on a day to day basis. There are a lot of questions that we as fans have. And to answer most of them, we decided to have a conversation with Vishal. Let's find out what he has to say about the current scenario of the sport in our country. Hi, Vishal. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Sports Khabri.
Thanks, Akshata. Thanks for having me.
Vishal, when you started your career, how difficult was it for you to find the right coach? We understand the importance of coaching in a sport like tennis. People go to great lengths to find that perfect coach for themselves. So back then, what was the struggle like for you?
Well, I think for us growing up, in some ways it was much simpler because there were only one or two centers you could go and play. I did all my training at the Delhi Lawn Tennis Association tennis center in Delhi, and for me that was my home. And coaches came, coaches left, but I stayed consistently. And yeah, so for me, finding a coach in my day and age was such a tough call because there were hardly any. But in today's day and age, of course, it's very tough to get the right coach, somebody who you vibe with well, somebody who knows the nuances of the sport quite well. So that definitely is a big challenge right now.
But Vishal, once you decided to turn pro, at that time, I'm sure, and looking at the athletes in different parts of the world, wasn't there ever a feeling that I want to explore better coaching opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, that feeling is always there. But unfortunately, when we were growing up, we didn't really have the money or the resources to, go abroad and train or get somebody from abroad to come and train. I used to train with a gentleman named Happy Bala in New York, but that was only in the summer because the rest of the year I couldn't afford for him to travel with me and be with me. So yeah, of course, those challenges were definitely a lot greater back in the day, and while things have improved now, we still have a long way to go.
We of course, while talking about tennis, we often sometimes miss out on, talking about the crucial matters, as you rightly said, that tennis is, of course, is an expensive sport. It doesn't come with, like, it's not, it can't be compared to some of the other sports in India. A lot of resources, a lot of time goes into it, and we still see that in singles event our country is still struggling. In doubles events, of course, we have had some great performances, but why is it that singles event, despite so many years, we've not been able to come up with someone who we can all look up to and can inspire the younger generation?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of how the game has changed and how the game has evolved. The courts have become slower. So we definitely need to start attracting better athletes to tennis. Speed is a big issue in tennis right now, and you need to have the right speed in order to compete at the highest level. So I think we need to start attracting better athletes to the game. We need to identify better athletes at a very young age. Kids who are genetically born with better speed, because it's easier to increase somebody's power, but to make somebody run faster is a much tougher challenge. So I think we need to look at that. And also, if you look at it, Akshata, over the last many years, generation on generation, tennis players have come and said, guys, we have no support, we need to be supported better. I think that's a major cog in the wheel which is missing, because a lot of the players just fall by the wayside, because they have no support. Case in point, one of our top juniors right now has just agreed to sign with a college in America just because he has no funds to turn pro. So these are the challenges that have been going on, and unless we don't address these challenges, we're going to keep singing the same tune over and over, year on year, same interviews, same narrative. Everything will keep. So some things have to give, some things have to change for us to be able to create better opportunities for our players here. One of the other things that we need to definitely do is start hosting a lot more international events here in India, so that a larger pool of our Indian athletes can get into the world rankings, move up in the world rankings, because most of them stop playing tennis by the time they're 20, 21, for lack of opportunities.
You rightly spoke about the support. Even in Davis Cup, India has gone to a newer low. There's no better way to express this. And it was, of course, not a joyous event for us. This is something that, like, we all should deeply look into, that why is this happening, that we have been relegated to the World Group 2 stage now. Uh, Despite all of this, why is it that we're not taking the right actions?
Well, that question is best answered by the powers that be. Of course, the athletes, the players are trying their best. Of course, in Davis Cup, you have to really punch above your weight, also, which I think the team hasn't done in the last few ties. If you look at the past glory, even of Leander Mahesher or whatever, or even Somdev, these guys were punching above their weight. So I think Davis Cup is one such event where the national pride comes out and you really need to push yourself to punch above your weight. So I think that's one of the things that has been missing. But other than that, like I said, we have to create better systems. We have to create more opportunities for our players, for them to be able to compete at the highest level. You can't expect people competing at a lower level to suddenly go and start playing against guys at a higher level and think that in Davis Cup or in Billie Jean King Cup you're going to beat them. It's not going to happen. So it has to be a holistic improvement in things. Only post which can we start thinking that okay, we can make a real difference.
Can you throw some light on how things can change better for tennis if we sort of alter the present OCI policies?
Yeah, so Akshita, firstly, it's a government policy, that you have to have an Indian passport in order to represent India, and I fully support that policy. I'm if you want to play for India, give up your passport, take the Indian passport. Why should you have the privileges of an American or any other European country passport? Uh, because look, if you allow that, the message you're sending to the kids in India is that look, if you may have the passport, you don't have the if you don't have the facilities and at all, you don't stand a chance of playing for India. I think that's very unfair. If you really have that nationalistic pride in you, then give up your passport and take an Indian passport and play. So I think that's not a solution. How are we going to get Indian tennis players to get better, or Indian tennis to rise up, is not by getting OCI kids into to play for India. It's about improving our standards. The reality on ground today is the people with the means, are not working hard enough, and the people who are working really hard enough don't have the means. We need to get the means to the people who are working hard enough, the lower middle class, the poorer kids who are actually working so hard to try and make a life for themselves. We need to encourage these guys. We need to get more opportunities for these guys. That's the solution. The solution is not picking up one or two OCI kids because they've shown some talent and said, okay, put them in the team. That's not a long term solution. You're trying to put a band-aid on a on a scar. It doesn't work that way. So I think for us to really improve things, we have to improve things from ground level up. We can't have these occasional fixes and think that okay, everything will be great. And we have to find that talent, we have to hunt for that talent, and we have to nurture and groom them. That's a long term solution for us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a very different perspective from what I have personally been hearing from other sports. Vishal, I don't want to get into what the federation is doing or not doing, but there is a crucial element of brands when it comes to a sport like tennis. There are athletes that are sponsored by bigger brands, like the wars keep going on, right? Are brands now trying to identify athletes in India, and are they willing to invest the kind of money and energy into them?
Well, I think it's still a very slow process, definitely for a sport like tennis. I mean, yeah, federation has its role and its part, but we as former athletes, we can play a role too. I mean, we can go to corporates, we can try and raise funding from them, we can try and host events in our country. So I think everybody has to work together if we want to see real change. We can't just sit on a chair and keep pointing fingers at each other in interviews or in TV debates and so on and so forth. Let's try and figure out how we can be a part of a solution. So I think even on that front, the brands, while they are starting to recognize there is sport beyond cricket in this country, I think it's still a very slow process. And I for one, have been advocating, instead of supporting one or two athletes in a sport, support the sport. So you can target a wider pool of players and athletes from a younger age. And the wider your pool goes, the more chances better talent emerges. So I think it would be prudent for any corporate house to look at tennis as a sport and say, hey, let me take the sport up and let me build it up to a level where then I start seeing returns on it, 5, 7, 10 years down the road.
Broadcasting is also one of the issues that I personally am not able to understand. That why is it that despite so many platforms, we are still struggling with broadcasting. The Indian Wells recently happened. Rohan Bobana won it. We living in India could not. We did not have the privilege to watch the match because Tennis TV, of course, has a massive subscription fee that not all of us can afford, right? Same with Sania Mirza. She played her last game, and I couldn't watch it because there's no way someone living in India could watch the match through through legal portals out there. So why is it that broadcast and even from a young child's perspective, if I think of this, how will I find my role models from my own country if I don't get to watch them play? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's become a big challenge. We're hardly seeing any tennis on television in India right now, and because of that, the sport is not going to catch popularity. And you made a very pertinent point when you said a youngster wants to watch matches to learn from them. So I think we need to. I mean, yeah, of course, we show the four major Grand Slams, on TV here, but we need to do more. We need to show more, and I think a couple of the TV channels, I do believe that one of the channels has the rights to the ATP tour, but hasn't been showing. I think that's where the producers, the channel heads have to take a call and make sure they're showing the sport on a more regular basis, so that there is more excitement generated, and not just sport which has the big events like the Indian Wells and stuff like that. We need to start finding ways of how we can portray our domestic talent, where we can show matches of our players, people who are playing Davis Cup or Billie Jean King Cup competitions for India, people who are representing India. We need to find ways of how we can put their matches on platform so wider number of people can watch them.
Vishal, with the amount of experience that you have gathered over the years, how is it training the new kids now? And another question I want to add to this is that this is something that I have. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is something that I have heard from a lot of people that Indians are not built to play singles events. We need to do a lot more for our fitness, etc. So there is sort of that kind of a mindset, which I'm sure that these younger kids must have also heard of, right? So there are mental blockages through which they come into the sport. So as a coach, how do you, of course, you work on the tactical, technicality of the sport, but how is it to train their mind to, make them start thinking like a winner, like a strong athlete?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Tennis for me is a complete sport. It's the most complete sport in the world because, you know, you have to be technically sound, you have to be tactically smart, you have to be physically a beast, and mentally you have to be tough as nails. So, it's a combination because once you're out there on a match court, it's just you. There's no one bailing you out. So you have to have that toughness in every aspect of the game for you to find success. Now, how do we groom athletes? First and foremost, let's cut out the negative chit chat. Stop telling a child that you don't have this and you don't have that. If you've got a child who has properties of an orange, try and make the best orange juice. Don't tell them you don't have properties of an apple or a banana. You're already putting fear or doubts in a child's mind. That's not going to help. If you look at an athlete, you see how they can develop to the best of their abilities. Now, everybody's not going to be a world champion, but you have to build everything ground up. People want to live in the penthouse, but please understand there are 25 floors which have to be built before the penthouse. Now, if we start talking negatively to our players, to our kids, and saying, "Oh, you know what, you don't have that ability in you," kids never going to try his heart out. You got to encourage kids to try their heart out, and no matter where they reach in their journey as a player, they'll at least know they gave it their best. Now you could tell somebody, a great athlete, you could tell a great athlete, hey, you're such a great athlete, you work hard, but dude, you have no money to play, so you can't become a player. Do you think that kid will have any determination to work hard? You've already pulled that child down. So I think we need to stop pulling people down. We need to encourage them to try their hardest, to try their best, to give it everything they have, and wherever life takes them, it will take them. I can tell you this: there is absolutely zero downside of pursuing tennis as a sport. in your formative years, at least till college, post college level. There's zero downside to it. So give it a fair shot. Give it everything you have and see what you make of it.
Vishal, my last question is that in an individual sport, at least whatever little I have understood reading the autobiography of Andredasi, or understanding the life history of Serena Williams and Venus Williams, parents often get involved. Often, yeah, they do get involved in a child's sporting career as well, and sometimes they just overdo things. And this is something that happens more in individual sports because there is a lot of one connection. As a coach, I'm sure you must be dealing sometimes with parents who do not know where to put a full stop, and they want to, of course, do better for their kids. They want their kids to achieve the best, but they somehow end up doing more harm than good. So as a coach, how do you tackle such parents, and what is it that you would like to tell such parents that please guide your kids in this particular way?
Well, on a lighter note, when parents want to coach their kids, I tell them, why don't you coach them? Let me go play golf and enjoy my life. But on a more serious note, I keep encouraging parents, be a parent, don't become a coach, because you have no knowledge of the sport. And, when it's like a blind person showing the way to a one-eyed person. The child who's playing tennis knows more about the sport than you do, who's just watching tennis. You've got to understand that. I mean, it's like a kid who's the only person playing tennis in the family. He's the best tennis player in the family. Knows more about the sport than you ever will. So my encouragement to parents always is, teach them values of life. Teach them about discipline, hard work, determination, trying hard. If you get knocked down, pick yourself up, try again. Teach them those values which you can teach. Don't teach them a sport because you have no knowledge of it. And little knowledge is dangerous, but you have very little or no knowledge at all. That makes it super dangerous. Leave that work to the coaches, trust the coaches, leave that work to them. But yes, you hold your child accountable to things like, hey, are you giving it your 100%? Did you try hard enough? Did you work hard enough? You gotta support and encourage your child in that way. If you start coaching a child, then that's the end of child's tennis, because your child will get conflicting viewpoints, one from your coach, one from your parent, and then the child doesn't know who to follow. So I think you need to trust your coaches, you need to trust your trainers, let them do their job, and you teach your child human values on how they can become tougher as human beings, how they can be better as human beings. So I think I always encourage parents to uh, support and love their kids no matter what happens, whether they're winning, whether they're losing. I had the great fortune of my parents always supporting me no matter whether I won or lost a match, which later on I realized why I became mentally so tough, because my parents just supported me no matter what I did, whether I lost or whether I won. I was treated exactly the same way, and they left the coaching to my coaches. Even though my dad is, Delhi University captain in tennis, not one day has he ever taught me how to play tennis. So I think you've got to trust your coaches, and you've got to understand the value of you being a good parent. Be a good parent, somebody who encourages, motivates, supports a child, especially when the child is down. If a child has lost a match, don't scream and shout at the child, because the child is already feeling bad they've lost a match. That's when you need to really help them pick themselves up and say, hey, son or daughter, come on, get up, let's go. We got work to do. So, I think my biggest advice to parents is, be a parent, don't become a coach.
Which are lastly, being a solutions oriented person as you are, a message of hope for all the tennis fans out there and young kids who are wanting to make a career in the world of tennis.
Well, I always keep telling people, if you're not going to believe in yourself, you're not going to reach anywhere in life. So, first and foremost, believe in yourself. If you see a fellow person who's, pulling themselves down, help them pick themselves up. The old saying, it takes a village to bring up a child. Same way, even in tennis, it takes a community to build up a player. So I think there is a lot of good stuff which is happening. You need to believe in yourself. You need to work really hard. You need to stay focused, be disciplined, and only then will you be able to realize your full potential. So I think every child, every person must give themselves a fair shot, 100% shot at trying to achieve their dreams. Only if you try will you succeed. If you give up, you're never going to know how far you can reach. So give it your best and see where life takes you.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Thank you for taking out the time to speak with us today. Very grateful to you for your time and wish you all the very best with the tennis project. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Akshita. Thank you for having me.